would also like to take a moment. This is trying to make some changes and improve some things. So I have taken now to simultaneously broadcasting the seminar on YouTube. It is available for you to watch, for anyone to watch later if they want, or to watch the stream live. I've put the link in the in call chat or whatever. I think that works. So I'm not too sure. I'm not good at all this stuff. I got to figure it all out, but I think that's how it works. So there's that. That's an option. I would definitely prefer if you stay on these meets calls with me, because that way we can interact. And I don't know how to do that on YouTube yet, or I'm not even sure if it's possible. Um, but that is an option. So if you know anybody who they've been kind of, you've talked to them and said they should watch the stream, but they don't want to give me their email and get on a list, and they're not, they don't feel comfortable or whatever, they'd rather kind of lurk in the background and take a more passive approach, feel free to send them the YouTube link. I don't mind at all. They can watch what we talk about. They won't be able to participate, but it's an option for them as well. Okay. Lastly, and there's not enough folks here, so I may have to repeat this a couple times, but I have broken down and paid for the premium Google blah 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 whatever service, um, because I found it obnoxious to be getting cut off at the end of the seminars, and especially last week I felt like we were, at least a couple of us were about to have a very interesting conversation, and then obviously, Google cut us off. So that should not happen this week. If you have any questions, you can feel like you have more than enough time to ask your question and for me to give you an answer, for someone else in the audience to chime in and give you their perspective. And so those are things. All this is just to say that I'm working slowly but surely at trying to improve things, from a technical and kind of format perspective, in the hopes that I can continue to deliver you interesting and inspiring information, and that we could continue to grow together. I know for me, I'm still pretty early in my own investing journey. Um, you know, I've told several people this, and now I'm telling you. One of my goals is to own like a 40-story apartment building, like a proper, like apartment building, like you would find, say, in like Brampton or something like that. That's one of my goals, and I'm nowhere near owning one of those yet. So I'm still pretty early in my own journey, and I hope that we can all continue to work towards our own individual goals, whatever they are, whether that's an early retirement or whether it's just a normal but secure retirement, or whether you want to build a business in real estate or you just want to supplement your income. Obviously, there's so many options and possibilities that are available to all of us. Um, just in life, I guess. I like to talk about real estate specifically because that's what we're here for. That's why you're here, and real estate's super interesting. But I don't want to be too narrow in my approach. I mean, there's so many opportunities, right? Um, Even right now, um, cryptocurrency is hitting all-time highs. So for those of you who know or invest or at least are aware, Ethereum and Bitcoin this week, well, Ethereum more than Bitcoin, but the two of them hit all-time highs. Right now, if you can believe this, a Bitcoin is worth 75,000 Canadian dollars, and then Ethereum is worth about 5,250 Canadian dollars. Um, so I mean, there's lots of money to be made there, right? And that's where I'd like to start today's seminar. Talk about places you can make money. No, actually, that's not it. I want to talk about the mindset behind making money, and something that I've noticed in myself, in my own life, with regards to taking action around investment ideas, concepts, business ideas, concepts, plans, motivation. Um, I don't know if you're like me. Obviously, we're all human, so you are like me in so many ways, but in the mindset way of undertaking a project, I don't know if we have the same approach. I'll tell you what my flaws or my problems are. I'm very good at idea generation, right? So I can come up with an idea, a concept. I can brainstorm, think through it, analyze, do those sorts of things. I'm good at that stuff, or relatively good at it, anyways. And so for me, a lot of the times, I can synthesize an idea. I can maybe even flesh it out, and that's my strong suit. Now, where I am not as strong is on the execution, right? for me, to steal words from my teachers in high school, I procrastinate too much, right? So for me, it's easy to say, hey, I want to do this thing. This is how you should do it, blah, 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 blah. But then when the rubber meets the road, so to speak, um, if this needs to be done by November the 13th, Aaron will have it ready for you on November 15th, kind of a thing, right? Now that's not always true, and I'm being more critical of myself than is maybe warranted. But in general, I find I have a tendency to procrastinate, right? And I think the reason I'm talking about this is because I think that that's common, right? Even if you don't maybe procrastinate in the same way that I do, I think a lot of us find it challenging, sort of working against procrastination, right? We all set out with the best of intentions, but then things come up in life, family, friends, uh, sickness, injury, politics, whatever, you name it. There's 1,001 things in life trying to distract us from what we're trying to accomplish, right? And we need tools to sort of overcome these obstacles, right? I don't believe I'm I firmly don't believe I don't really believe in like special people or this or that. Like I look at someone like LeBron James. To me, LeBron James is incredibly special as an athlete, right? I'm only talking about him as an athlete. As an athlete, he's one of the most gifted, athletically freakish men maybe ever. I don't know, right? That being said, if you listen to people talk about LeBron James, the things that they talk about have nothing to do with his natural gifts. They talk about work ethic, how he's the first person in the gym, how he's the last person to leave the gym, how he spends the most time studying the tapes, right? And when you look at it, right, LeBron James is a product more of his work and his habits and his tools than he is of his actual natural advantages, right? And I mean, he obviously has them because he's friggin' what is he like 6'9", 6'10", 240 pounds, just pure athletic. Yeah, so the dude's obviously got his gifts, but the thing to focus on are the tools that he uses to kind of get the most out of those gifts, right? And for me, I've been thinking about this procrastination thing and just kind of the challenge of motivating yourself, because for me, I found that at times, you'll have a project or an undertaking or an investment, and it's just like go, go, go. You're fired up and excited, and you're taking action, and nothing's stopping you for whatever reason. And then there are other periods where like nothing has changed from the time when you were investing and it was go go, or you were working on the business or whatever opportunity it was, but for some reason you're not motivated, you're not taking action, you're not making the offer, you're not calling the realtor, you're not whatever it is, right? Whatever the follow through is. And so I've really thought about this for myself, and I think I understand, at least in my own psychology, kind of why this discrepancy occurs between the times when productivity is easy and the times when I just want to sit on the couch watching Netflix, or whatever, right? Or playing, or playing video games or whatever. So there's a book I've read. Fortunately, I can't showcase it behind me because I don't own the physical copy, only an audiobook. But there's a book. It's called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. Annie Duke was a former professional poker player. She's a real beast of a lady. She won lots and lots of money playing poker, and then she became, I can't remember, she became like a business systems analyst or something. Anyway, she started consulting basically for large corporations on how to make better business decisions and just decision making in general. And she talks about thinking in bets, and obviously when you play poker, which I hope all of you have played poker, right? You're always making decisions and you're always wagering behind those decisions, right? You're thinking in bets, for lack of a better way to put it, right? And the people who do that the best end up winning the most money. And I guess the central thesis of Annie's book, and I really recommend, if you're the kind of person who likes to read and you like good books, Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. It's a little on the dry side, but it's quite a good book, and it's not that long either. I think it was a 5-hour audiobook. So in my experience, that probably works out to be about a 250 to 300 page book. So really not too bad of a read. But anyways, her central thesis or the central theme of her book is that all of our decisions, um, is that basically she thinks people take their decisions too seriously. A lot of us will sit down and we'll hand wave and we will, vacillate and basically waste time on thinking about these huge, large decisions. Do I buy this house? Do I marry this girl? Do I move to this city? Blah blah blah. All these big, the question is always a big question, or maybe not always, but oftentimes, right? And what Annie basically it suggests is it is not productive in any way to think about these large things, because these large things don't really exist, right? These large things, they're a series of much, much smaller things and much, much smaller decisions. And these decisions are small enough that, so to give you an example of, should I buy this house or not, or should I marry this girl? We'll take those two examples, right? That's a huge decision, really. Let's go with the marry the girl one, because that's a really easy one to understand. It's a huge decision to decide whether or not you should marry someone. There are many, many, many factors: personality, family, income, life goals, blah, 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 maybe religion, culture, blah, all of these things that a person may take into consideration before they decide to marry someone. And so the decision, hey, should I marry this girl? Basically, it's an impossible question to answer, because there's 1,001 questions that need to be answered before you can answer that question, right? Annie's approach is go out on a date and make a bet. Hey, does this girl and I, do we resonate culturally? I don't know. I don't know what the bet is exactly, but if yes, then we move on to the next bet, right? If no, okay, cool, doesn't work out. You know what? I'm obviously not gonna marry this girl because I don't have the building blocks that are gonna get me to marriage. So it's on to the next person. It's on to the next situation, right? Uh, to move that over to real estate investing, right? It's like the question isn't should I buy this house, right? The first question is maybe what area am I going to look at? Where do I want to move? Or how much money do I want to spend? Or right? It's some smaller question that you're going to make a decision on first. And as you build up these small decisions, eventually the goal or the idea should be that there never comes a point where you need to make a decision. Am I going to marry this girl? At some point, you've just made so many of these smaller bet decisions that she has, I guess, made it over or whatever, right? That she's passed, for lack of a better way to put it. That eventually the decision is made for you. That, yeah, obviously I'm gonna marry this girl. Look, she passed all the hoops. She jumped through all the hoops or whatever, right? Same thing with the house, right? You don't sit down and think about a house in its totality and say, hey, I'm going to buy this house. You break it down into its constituent parts, location, demographic, tenant profile, financing availability. All of these considerations are going to determine whether you buy the house, right? And so as you work towards your end goal, in this case, buying the house or marrying the girl or whatever, right, it's much more effective for us to take those really big ideas and break them down in small pieces. And Annie's argument, and my experience in my own life, is that when I have a big problem, like where should I live, it's almost paralyzing, right? It's like it's too much to think about. There's too much to consider, and I, to be honest, I just don't want to deal with that much. It's almost like information overload, right? And you just want to turn away from it. You just you just kind of want to be like, later. We'll deal with this later. So that later never comes because it's always still annoying the next time you look at it, right? Instead, we need to break these things down, do everything bit by bit, point by point, and remember that if you're thinking in bets, sometimes you lose a bet, right? Like part of the point of the thinking in bet framework is letting go of this idea that you need to be right, right? A lot of us focus on getting things right. To go back to the question, should I marry this girl? There are a lot of downsides to marrying the wrong girl, but you know what? People survive divorce. It happens. They don't survive being murdered by their partner, so try not to get a girl who's going to murder you, or a guy for those of you who are female. But um, in general, failure is actually an acceptable I mean, it's not a preferred, but it is an acceptable outcome, right? Same thing. If I buy a house, could I lose money on a house? I could. I hope I wouldn't, but I could, right? Um, you can lose money a lot of ways. You can lose money by just not doing anything. I'll tell you a real quick story about how I lost $100,000 by not doing anything. 5 years ago, I was investing in cryptocurrency, and that's kind of when I started in earnest. I had some cryptocurrency because I was kind of a nerdy kid, like right when Bitcoin came out, when it was worth nothing, when people were paying like 3,500 Bitcoins to buy a pizza and that kind of thing. I had some. I had a gaming computer and I set it up to mine and blah blah blah, and I kind of had played around with it, and I didn't understand it or what it was or its potential or anything. And so that's all gone. So whatever, we don't worry about that. But 5 years ago, I got back into it in earnest because then I understood it as an economic tool and as something that was going to be valuable. And I started investing, and that the story's history. Aaron invested a decent amount of money in cryptocurrency, and I've done well. Um, but at that time, I decided, you know what, I understand this cryptocurrency thing, and I really think that everybody I speak to in my life and my day to day doesn't. And there's going to be a lot of wealth that's transferred from the people who understand, sorry, from the people who don't understand to the people who do. And since the people who I knew who didn't understand were friends of mine, they were family, they're good people who did not deserve to lose money just because they didn't know something. I set out to try and help educate some people and get them to buy cryptocurrency. And so I started a small business back when the government had not made it illegal for you to buy and sell cryptocurrency on other people's behalf. And I bought and sold cryptocurrency for several people. And I've made some people hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some folks I made a few $1,000s, much more modest. But we did well. We did well. And I remember at the time having a conversation with my partner, uh, my girlfriend at the time, now fiance, about investing some of her money in the cryptocurrency, and she did. I convinced her to put, I don't know, I can't remember how much, maybe $1,000, something. It was a very modest amount of money into the cryptocurrency, which was a shame because she actually had quite a bit of savings at the time that she could have used to buy cryptocurrency. So I had another client who spent, oh, I want to say $35 or $40,000 with me investing in cryptocurrency, and so he's made somewhere on the order of $400,000 since his initial investment. And my girlfriend at the time could have made that same exact investment, but I didn't push her because I wasn't sure. I didn't know what the future was going to be. I knew there was a good future. I knew she should definitely make the bet, and she did, a small one. I didn't realize, we should have bet the house in the kitchen sink on the cryptocurrency market, right? So I didn't push her too hard, and as a result, she probably could have made three or $400,000. And since we're now getting married, some of that money would have been mine. But inaction cost me money, right? And so it's very important, when we think about the projects, the tasks, and the investments in our lives to remember, not just that there is upside to action sometimes, or that there's sometimes downside to action, but that there's also sometimes downside to inaction, right? That it's not possible to avoid basically losing, because even if you're doing everything right, you could still be losing, right? Like in my example scenario, if I tell 9 out of 10 people that story, they'll all look at me sideways because they'll be like, "What do you mean you made lots of money and you helped other people make money? There's nothing there to be upset about or anything." And it's true, I'm not upset, right? I'm simply just pointing out, like, there's an opportunity cost to making the wrong bets, right? And that needs to be okay because we're playing a game where you're betting and you're not always going to be right, right? So, um, what we need to be doing is measuring the risk of the bet that we're taking against the reward of the bet, right? Just like, I don't know, for those of you who follow basketball, right? The Toronto Raptors this year, they look kind of exciting. The new kid, Scotty Barnes, on the team, he's got a lot of energy. He's bringing some life to the team, and everybody else on the team is really looking like, sorry, those returning players really look like they've been stepping up their game, and obviously they've got a bunch of new young guys who look like they're all going to be great, fantastic prospects for the team, right? Um, if you follow sports betting, right, there's betting odds on Rookie of the Year, right? So Toronto has one of the contenders, Scotty Barnes, and I think his odds right now are plus 600 or minus 600. I can't remember. No, plus 600. Pretty sure his odds right now. They may have gone down because he keeps playing really well, so people are moving him up. but plus 600. So basically, I give you $100, you give me back $600 if I win, right? So 6 to 1 return. You know, basically, I'm willing to take any bet where I think I have a greater than 1 in 6 chance of winning the bet to get 6 times my money. That's a bet I should more or less take all day, right? And if you think about it, right, this is a very effective strategy for making decisions, right? If you go to a casino, do casinos lose money, right? And the answer is, of course, no, they don't. The house always wins. I mean, casinos do lose money, but usually not in gambling. It's usually bad business decisions. Um, the casino always wins, right? And why does the casino always win? Because the casino has thought about every game that you're going to play with them, and they've thought about the bets, and they've calculated the probability and the odds, and they've priced accordingly so that ultimately you can never play a 1 in 7 chance game that pays out exactly 7x, right? Because that would be an equilibrium. So instead, all of their games are structured so that you have a 1 in 7 chance of, this is not the literal structure, I'm just saying. You have a, illustratively, you have a 1 in 7 chance of winning, but you only have a 6 times payout. So that at all times, there's always a slight advantage to the house so that they're going to profit, right? If you do that same thing in your life, where you try to break down your decisions into what is the probability that I get the outcome that I desire, and then you adjust your bet accordingly, you can, in theory, at least according to Annie Duke, and I happen to agree with her, you can set up a situation where you, right, are basically the house, and more of your bets are coming in wins than losses, right? Um, I think it's really sad. Sometimes I go to the like the convenience store, Rabba, corner store, whatever, and you'll see people come in and they're playing the lotto. And I've got nothing against you playing the lotto if that's your if that's your thing, right? But I'll see these people, they come in and they're spending like 30, $40 on lottery tickets. You know, they're really, and it's like they don't understand the odds. They haven't thought. I mean, those people, and especially people who are fixated on the lottery, usually are like this. But like they're fixated on the reward, right? What you get. Oh, I could win $50 million, and you hear that all the time. You hear people, especially when the jackpot is big, they're like, "Oh, the jackpot is huge. I got to go buy a lottery ticket." It's like, well, yeah, sure, like the jackpot is huge, but that means your odds are. I mean, they sucked when the jackpot was $1 million, but what are they now when it's $50 million and everybody's buying 12 tickets to try and win it? You know, you're not thinking about the full equation, right? You're only thinking about what comes after the equal sign, and that's a very bad way to do math. You know, you got to balance the equation, right? That's what math is. You balance two sides that are divided by an equal sign. And a lot of life's errors are people who, I mean, fundamentally, we do such a bad job of teaching math that people don't really understand it fundamentally as this balancing of two halves, right? A lot of the errors in judgment that people make is looking at a situation that you could abstract mathematically and ignoring one half of the equation, right? And you see that. I mean, you see this right now. We're seeing this in the economy. To bring things back a bit more broadly, um, for those of you who've been shopping recently, you go to Walmart, or I don't actually do that much shopping, so I'm gonna stick with Walmart or maybe pizza because I tried to order some pizza the other day. I'll tell you guys, there's a crisis going on in the world. I tried to order some pizza and there's no garlic dipping sauce. So no garlic dipping sauce. There's a supply chain shortage, I guess, of garlic dipping sauce for the moment. I'm sure Pizza still has it because they'd go out of business without it. But I'm talking about like Domino's or Pizza Hut, those types of places. They don't have garlic dipping sauce. But anyways, you go to Walmart, right? You see there are shelves that are empty. There are product categories that are missing. If you call businesses or if you work for a company and you guys are dealing with suppliers, you're probably calling them and you're getting these really crazy, obscene lead times, right? I work in a business where we are buying and selling products from all over the world. And, you know, we're getting some products that they're saying they won't have stock of for 4 months, right? Which is, that's not how things used to be. Let's put it that way, right? Um, Unfortunately, people, and there's a political thing in this case. People looked at the equation of, you know, well, in this case, I guess it was COVID response, right? But then they didn't look at, so they looked at the fear, the outcome, which was, I guess, millions of people dead from COVID or whatever, right? The ostensibly the disaster, whatever it was, right? So that's what the equals sign gave us. But then they didn't look at the equation on the other side. So it turns out that, yeah, we can get rid of the disaster, so to speak. I mean, you may not agree that there's a disaster. I certainly don't. But we can get rid of the disaster, right? But to do so, we have to do all these things. Well, it turns out these things disrupt the economy and the supply chain, right? And nobody really thought about that because when you disrupt the economy and the supply chain, I'll tell you right now what will happen. I can't tell you when it will happen. I don't know how exactly it will happen. I know it will happen relatively soon. You know, when I say relatively soon, within the next year or two, probably. But I can't really give you more details than that. When you disrupt the supply chain, people starve. Period. That's what happens. It doesn't start that way, right? Like right now, there's just a shortage of tools, and maybe there's a shortage of, I don't know, your favorite snack food at Walmart, and like I said, my dipping sauce at Pizza Hut or whatever, right? But as that wave moves through the economy, it ultimately ends up in food not being produced somewhere down the line, and then people not being able to eat. And to illustrate the case, I want to give you an example of exactly how and why that happens. So you know, I'm not just fear mongering or giving you the gas like you'd get, listening to regular media or whatever. You've all been in traffic, right? This is actually a great example. I was talking to Natalie, my fiance, about this very situation, and I gave her this example, and it kind of clicked for me, like, wow, what a illustration. You've all been on the highway in traffic, maybe rush hour, maybe there's an accident, maybe whatever, but you've all been there, right? And you've all sat in traffic where things are like they're dead stopped, and you're trying to get to where you're going or whatever, and you're sitting there thinking to yourself, man, like what the hell has happened? Why, we're not moving? What's the holdup? What's the disruption? Right? And so you drive and you drive, and it's really slow going, but whatever. And maybe 20 minutes go by, and finally you're thinking, yeah, I'm getting to the point where the disruption has occurred or whatever, right? And you get there and the road is clear, right? How many of you has that happened to? You get to the place where there's a disruption, there is no disruption. You've been sitting in traffic, but you can't figure out why. It just seems like it's a combination of people being stupid and that leading to traffic. And that is a good explanation, though it's not quite sufficient. What's happening there is a wave. Actually, if you take this is actually a property in physics, right? What's happening is you're creating what's called a wave. I think it's called a standing wave is actually what it would be in this situation, but I'm not a physicist, so don't ask me. I'm not really too sure what they exactly call it. But basically, this is what happens. Okay, you've got a whole bunch of people on the highway. The highway is very congested, right? And you have somebody at the front. Maybe it's an old grandma or something. She sees a pothole or something, so she slams on the brakes because she doesn't want to, misalign her tires or whatever. So she's gonna slam on the brakes because it's a pothole, right? And so she slows down, let's say 30 kilometers or whatever. But then the car behind her is caught by surprise, right? And they have a little less time to react because they weren't expecting for no reason. So now they brake, but they slow down to 35 kilometers, right? Because there's a little bit of margin of error. And again, they were a little slow to react. Well, each car keeps doing that, and let's say each car loses 1%, right, of the speed or whatever. That's fine, but there's 1,000 cars in this line. So even at 1% after 1,000 cars, you're going to get to zero. And so eventually what happens is that grandma slowed down 30 kilometers at the very front of the line, but because of the congestion and because her braking is now propagating backwards through all of the traffic, right? Each car behind her subsequently is slowed down for just a little fraction of a second longer than she was. And across 150 cars, right, that fraction of a second adds up to a dead stop, right? So now you have somebody who they've got nowhere to go. They have to stop their car. And now each car behind them not only stops, but now has to sit there for a second waiting for the car in front of them to be able to continue going, right? And so this is why sometimes you'll encounter traffic where everything has stopped moving. You had to sit there and wait for 20 minutes, but there's nothing that happened. The reason for it is because people who were not driving efficiently started braking, and that propagated backwards, and that wave as it moves backwards through the traffic, it basically stretches out in physics terms, or in light terms you call it a redshift. It basically spreads out, and so it slows things down, and you stop moving through traffic. Okay, and you see, I mean, you've all been through this, and you've experienced the delays that can cause. Well, the same thing is currently happening with our economy, right? The exact same thing. Our economy is just like a highway. There's all kinds of stuff moving all kinds of places at all times of day, right? Certain things need to be here and there and whatever, right? And things are trying to go, but of course, things can't move ahead of the things that are in front of them, right? So, for an example, right, in the industry where I work, right, we produce machine tools for automotive, aerospace, that kind of thing, manufacturing, right? So, if you're going to make a car, you need the tools that the company I work for makes or distributes, whatever, right? And obviously, there's lots of companies who do this, right? So, you're going to go buy your tools to now go make your engine, right? You cannot make an engine until I've made tools to make the engine, right? So you see, you're stuck in traffic behind me, right? And I can't make tools to make engines until I've bought the materials, right? The steel or the tungsten or whatever it is, right? And I can't buy materials until the metallurgists have bought their steel or their tungsten powder so that they can make me the blanks that I require. And they can't make it right until they get their steel from the miners or whatever. And it goes on and on and on. Of course, the miners can't mine anything unless their miners go and they have a house in Sudbury to live in to rent from me so that they can go up to the mine and mine the metal, right? And they can't go mine the metal if they're hungry, so they've got to go, the Sobeys and whatever, and they gotta get food. So on and on and on. So everything is in this kind of arrangement. If you imagine like a highway where there's trucks in front of you, and those trucks have to make it to their destination before you can produce the thing that you produce, and it can make it to its destination. And the reason why I say this ends in people starving is because ultimately, right, the thing that's kind of it's both at the very front and the very end of the production chain is food, right? Right. As I pointed out with the miner, he needs to eat in order to mine food for you. And every person in that step needs to eat, right, in order to produce that thing, right, and move it on to the next step. And this is how people end up going hungry, is because there's food for the miner, and then he produces his good, and there's food for the metallurgist, and then he produces his good, and now there's food for the tool makers, and now we produce our good, and then we sell it on to Ford, and there's food for Ford and their automotive makers, right? But each of us is pulling out the food. There's only a finite amount of food, right? And because of the supply chain disruption, there's less food than what is required. So far, everybody's getting their food. It's no problem at all. Now we get to the automotive workers. They get their food. Maybe they make the car. Now they send the car on to the salesman. Maybe the salesmen make the money. They get food too. But at some point, there's somebody, and it's the people who are at the very tail end of the economy, who they're not going to be able to eat because they might or might not get money, but there's no food left for them to buy, right? And the thing that I always find very frustrating and kind of tragic about the whole situation is, who are the people who sit at the tail end of the economy, right? They're the most vulnerable people, right? If you're that person who's selling a burger at McDonald's, you're at the very tail end of the economy, right? Thousands of other people have touched that product before you do. You're the last point of contact. You're the last person to extract value from the value chain, right? And so you're also the last person to eat, right? Because you got paid last, essentially. Everybody else got a chance to go to the store and buy stuff before you did. And this is how the economy ultimately ends up with people not being able to eat, because there's that mismatch in, to take the mathematics. Our equation does not balance at this point, right? And I know I'm supposed to be talking to you about how to get rich and whatever, but I think that the mindset, the mentality is so important. And I found it very sad and very frustrating, um, this last year and a half or so, to watch people hand wave, these economic problems, which, yeah, they're a little dry, they're a little boring, they're a little, they're not the exciting thing. Okay, I'll grant you that, right? And they're not the scary thing either, like COVID was when we didn't know what it was, or but they're important. They're very important. And I hope I've done a good job of illustrating to you how and why they matter, how and why it works that people end up not being able to eat, and why that's important economically. Not just that, but I did bring the example around that I, as an investor who's buying a home in Sudbury, as an example, and providing a place for that miner to live, I'm contributing to the overall benefit of our society. It's not just my self-centered, hey, I'm trying to get rich. Yes, that's true. I maybe rich is strong, but hey, I want to have a successful, materially comfortable life. Absolutely. But I want to do that by making sure that other people have successful, materially abundant lives, right? And by creating a win-win. And when you go out and you spend your hard-earned money to build things, build businesses, build real estate empires, build whatever, you're making other people's lives better. Um, when you use men with guns, that's what I like to call people who work for the government. They're men with guns, right? And you can think they're good people or bad people. I'm not making that judgment. I'm simply pointing out the government does everything at ultimately at the hands of a man with a gun, right? A police officer, a soldier. These are the people who enforce the government's edicts. When you do things with men with guns, those do not create win-win situations. And that's how you end up with an economy that becomes distorted the way that our economy is right now, and ultimately and eventually it leads to people starving. It's a very, very sad thing. Anyways, back to thinking in bets and how to apply this to your real estate investing or to investing in general, right? I already pointed out you need to weigh the probability of a given outcome against the cost of taking action, right? This is just fundamental to making a good decision. Once you, pardon me, once you've done that, right? Now you just need to decide if you're pulling the trigger. One of the reasons why rich people get richer, the old adage, the rich get richer and the poor don't get a thing. One of the reasons why that is kind of true, um, actually, I would say that's wildly true. It's probably extremely true. One of the reasons why that is so true is because when you're rich or wealthy, just by the nature of having so much wealth, many more of your decisions become bets. When you're poor, you can't afford to make bets. So you don't. So you never win any upside. Right. And so I'll give you a very good example. I'll go back to my own success with the cryptocurrency. So, I've made some money with the cryptocurrency. Nothing crazy. I'm not about to retire or anything, but I did make some money. Right. And now that I've made that money, right now I've got a whole bunch of money that's sitting there. Right. And I tell you right now, someday I have to pay taxes on that money. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna be an ouch, that tax bill. But anyways, I'm gonna have to talk to some good accountants, see if I can avoid some of it. But I take that money now. I look at it and I go, huh. I got all this money just kind of sitting here. I mean, it's not really because it's still cryptocurrency, but just kind of sitting here. What can I do with it? And so I've come up with a bunch of bets, so to speak, that I'm going to be trying in the next couple of months with some of that money, where, not to sound like callous or gross, but you know what? If I lose $5,000 on some bet, then I lose it. It's okay. I'll be okay, right? And so I can maybe go out there and I can make $5,000 bets, right? And if each of them have 10 to 1 odds, I only need one of them to hit, and I'll be ahead, right? And so this is the thing where, as you're able to grow your just personal wealth and get a better perspective, right? Then you become less attached to each individual dollar and you become more inclined to make bets in the first place, right? And this is one of those things that uh, Carol S. Dweck points out in her book on mindset, right? Is that people who have a scarcity mindset get locked into this style of thinking where I can't take bets, I can't take risks because things are scarce. And if I screw up, then that's it. This is my only opportunity. If I screw up, I'm being fed to the sharks, kind of a thing, right? And the reality of life is that, I mean, you can definitely screw up and get fed to sharks. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like you can't f up so bad that you die or you end up poor or whatever. You can. It does happen, um, but in general, that's not what's going to happen. You're going to lose some money. You're going to lose some time. You're going to you know a lot of the times we're so good at using our imaginations to inflate what the negative outcome is going to be. And I think the last year and a half of COVID has been such a beautiful case study of that, right? Like the 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 fear and hysteria of what people were afraid was going to happen, what they imagined could happen, versus the reality really of what has happened so far. They're worlds apart, right? And if I live my life with half the anxiety that some of the true believers of the COVID thing live, I'd never do anything because the world is such a scary and terrifying place. I mean, literally, if somebody sneezes in the same park as you, you might die, right? That we're very good at blowing the risks of things out of proportion, right? And kind of really skewing our decision making because we are risk averse, right? And there's nothing wrong with risk aversion. I mean, I don't recommend any of you go play Frogger on the 401 400 series highway. It's probably not a good idea. Um, but at least when we're talking about investing and personal finance and really growing your personal wealth and net worth, right? Fear is actually, fear is a very useful thing as well, right? Because you probably shouldn't like go to the casino and bet everything on 36, right? Um, but within reason, you do need to take risks, right? You maybe do need to step into that casino, and you maybe need to play the outside, right? And make maybe slightly smaller bets that won't make you as much money. But sorry, I'm making roulette references here. I don't know. Maybe some of you don't know roulette, but there's the inside and the outside, right? The inside is you're betting on specific numbers or combinations of numbers. The outside is colors or odds, evens, that kind of thing, right? So you can make a very specific kind of go for broke bet, which is a bad idea almost always because the odds are not in your favor. Or you can make a series of smaller, more measured bets that will slowly but surely win you a small advantage over time, right? And this should be the goal. The book is called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. That's right. Um, the, this I think is the key, right? Again, for me, for my own life, for my own motivation, when I go to look at a real estate deal or I go to try to analyze a business opportunity or I'm looking at an investment opportunity, right? Whether it's real estate or maybe it's crypto or it's something else, right? For me, a very important part of it is to break down the idea or the opportunity or the whatever, and to just try to decide one thing at a time. You know, to use an example, we used to, like I said, I used to do private lending. Right, we used to lend out money for real estate to real estate investors. Right, and so we had to make decisions. Hey, are we going to lend to this guy? Right. So our first question was always, how much money are we lending? Do we feel comfortable with this amount of money? If the answer was yes, then the next question was, well, what interest rate are we getting? Do we feel comfortable with our interest rate? Right. And so the question was never, hey, are we going to lend, $300,000 to Armando Young at 7.5%, blah, 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 whatever the details are for 2.5 years, etc. That's never the question, right? That's too big of a question. The question was always this real simple one. Are we comfortable lending this much money? Okay, yes, we are. Is the interest rate correct? Okay, yes, it is. Okay, who's Armando? Is he reliable? Does he have a good credit score? Okay, yes, he does. Where does he live? What is the security? Do we feel comfortable with the security? What about the term? How long is it? And when we've checked all of the little boxes, the decision is made for us. It's like if Armando checks all the boxes and his loan checks all the boxes, then we lend to him. And if he doesn't, we don't. And there's never that anxiety of, am I making the right decision or am I not? Because I've distilled all of my decisions down into small enough pieces that I know I can be accurate. Right? If you ask me the question, is lending hundreds of thousands of dollars to Armando for the next 3 years a good idea? It's such a large question. There's so much contained in it that I can't ever give you a correct answer. Right? I don't know. Right? It probably is, but there's so many variables at play. I can't ever confidently say that I've actually thought everything through. Right? But if I ask a much simpler question, right? Do I have $300,000 to give to Armando? Well, it's a yes or no question, right? Would I lend 10% per year on my $300,000? Would I like to make $30,000 off my $300,000? It's a yes or no question. Either you do or you don't, right? Then there's a question of risk, right? Well, what is the risk? There's some chance that Armando's not going to pay you back. Are you comfortable with that? Well, what is my recourse, right? It's like, okay, well, Armando's going to secure this loan with his house, and it happens to be worth $5 million. So you know what? There is no risk, basically. Do you want to do the deal, right? And eventually, you've answered enough of these questions that yeah, you want to do the deal, right? It's the same thing I was saying earlier about the qualifying the woman for marriage, right? You don't ask, you can I marry this girl? Will we have a good life? Blah blah blah. It's again, it's too vague of a question. It's not. I can't be confident that I've answered the question because there's too many variables at play. Now, can I ask the question? Is this girl sweet? Is she nice? Does she take care of me or herself or her family? Is she a church girl or is she a not church girl or whatever it is that you're into, right? Um, those are the questions, and if you can answer those questions, right, like I can say for sure if the girl's a church girl or not. I can't tell you whether or not she's going to be faithful for 40 years, right? I don't know if that's your goal, whatever, and that she's got good birthing hips or whatever it is you're after. But I can answer this one narrow question, right? And the same thing with real estate, with investing, with whatever. If I drill my questions down to the point where they're small enough that I can think about them rationally, logically, I can understand them completely, I can answer the question, I can move on, right? And that's one of the problems, is that if you find yourself faced with indecision, and we all do, and it's something that does require a level of self-awareness, right? But if you find yourself faced with indecision, chances are you're asking the wrong question. And specifically, you're probably asking too large or too abstract of a question, so that it's not possible for you to really understand thoroughly what you're trying to think or work your way through. And therefore, it's very difficult or impossible to arrive at an actual solution, right? And just to kind of hammer this point home, because I do actually think there's a very, very valuable piece of information right here. I think most people are trained. Like, you go to school, and in school, teachers will teach you to answer ridiculous, stupid questions that you definitely could not actually answer in real life. And people pretend. I'll give you another example. I was talking to someone about history the other day, right? Just about history, and just kind of the world in general, what the world is like today. And I was thinking about it because I like history. I'm a bit of a history buff, and I'm no historian or anything, but I do enjoy reading history and listening to people talk about history. And I was thinking about the word history, 'cause I think the word history is a great word, and we don't say it properly because we're mispronouncing that word. History is an old word, and we're completely mispronouncing it. The word is his story, not history. It's his story. And over years of saying his story, we started shortening it to history. But it's his story. And it's important to note that it's his story because there's no such thing as history. It's funny that we talk about it. I just said that I like history, and I do. But there's really no such thing as history. There's his story, and there's a lot of his stories. And it's interesting how only some people's his stories make it into the present, and a lot of people's his stories get ignored, get lost, get become deemed irrelevant. You know, um, I don't want to make this political. I don't care how you think or feel uh, politically. I mean, I do, in the sense of, I hope whatever your beliefs are will lead you to a prosperous, happy, successful life. But at the end of the day, who you vote for is not really relevant to me. But I do want to point out the reason I preface, because I'm going to talk about something slightly controversial. On January the 6th of this year, I think it was this year. Shoot, time's getting away from me now. They had that whole Capitol riot thing in the States, right? And I don't care who you think was right or wrong, what their motivations were or anything. I just want to point out that on January the 7th, right, the day after, people could not agree on what had happened. So we talk about history as if, oh yeah, history is like what happened in the past. And yet the very next day in the year 2021, when everyone has a cell phone with a camera in their pocket, and it has never been harder to lie, we could not agree on what took place the day before. And I really want you to think about that because people talk about history as if they can tell you what the future is or what's going to happen in the world, as if they know what happened in the past. And I just want to point out to you that you don't even know what happened a day ago in a world with cell phones where people are recording things, much less to tell me what happened 100 years ago in a world where nobody was recording anything, and it was much, much easier for people to lie, distort, deceive. So there's just a little, a little insight is, in school, for example, right, to go back to my point, in school, they teach you history completely ignoring everything I just said. They act as if what I just said is not something that you have to deal with, as if there is actually a story that you can know that this is what happened, because it's in the textbook. And it's like, well, no, that's not what happened. That's what your guy says happened. And your guy has an agenda, and you have an agenda. So you pick the guy because he aligned with your views, and you ultimately align with somebody's views. And so ultimately, you see how things get very complicated. And so it's very important that we break things down because, again, in the school, they encourage this kind of very sloppy thinking where you don't examine the parts that go into the whole. they just present you with the whole, and then they ask you questions about the whole, and they don't care if you ever understand the constituent components of the whole, which is why most of you receive just the absolute worst education in history, and most of you probably don't know very much about what happened in the past. Because if you do, it's because you took an interest yourselves, not because the school educated you. Because the school was doing this very surface level thing where they don't dive deep, they don't get into the weeds. And part of it is because the people, teaching don't understand, and part of it is because it's hard. You know, goodness knows I can tell you the problems with history, but I've got no ability to kind of what's the word here, to kind of ameliorate or to soften any of those problems, right? Like I don't know. I couldn't tell you what happened 100 years ago either. I can only tell you that whatever story you're telling me is not the whole story. That's the only thing that I do know, right? And it's very, very important, right? I get asked sometimes, people ask me about the future in terms of investing, obviously with cryptocurrency, with real estate, with these types of things. They'll say, "Oh, Aaron, should I buy a house this year or cryptocurrency? Where's it going, or this or that, right?" And not to belittle anyone who asks those questions, I understand what they're asking and what they're trying to get at, but I can't answer them. I don't know. If I'm going to think about the problem accurately, then it's too big for me to answer this really sloppy question of like, what's going to happen in the next year? It's like, dude, have you thought about even for a second about what that means? What's going to happen in the next year? Like, think about if you asked me that in November of 2019. Hey, Aaron, what's going to happen in the next year? I don't know, but I guarantee you, whatever I told you, I was going to be wrong because I wasn't going to predict COVID, right? Nobody was, right? So the idea that like you can just know, you can't know. You can only think, you can only believe, you can only feel, you can understand up to a point where it seems very highly likely, but you can't know with certainty. And so that's why thinking in bets is such a valuable tool, because everything in life is ultimately a probability, to give you an example, I mean, to kind of ultimately cap it off, I don't know if I'm going to wake up tomorrow, right? I could die in my sleep. I could have a heart attack, an embolism, stroke. It'd be strange because I'm not the age where that would typically happen, but there are people my age where that happens to them. It's not guaranteed, right? And so this idea that like I can know what the future holds, like I just can't. I'm betting that tomorrow I'll be alive, so that's why I'm going to pay my bills, right? I'm not going to bet that I'm going to pass away in my sleep. So I paid my Mastercard the other day, right? But in theory, I could die and then I'd be wasting my last precious minutes paying off my credit card when I could have been, loving the people, my loved ones or whatever, right? So you've always got to remember nothing is for certain. And this idea that you're going to find certainty, that you're going to mathematically calculate the perfect course of action and it's going to just be right. No. If it worked like that, then everybody would be rich because it'd be easy, right? Everybody can do uh for example, simple mathematics, right? Everybody can do their basic arithmetic, right? Everybody can add 6 plus 8, right? And because everybody can do that, there's no value there, right? And it's the same thing about this. But what most people can't do is most people can't take in the complexities of the world and appreciate and understand that they're never going to understand or control those things, but know that they can break them down to a point that's a small enough perspective that they can understand their little corner, their little piece of it well enough to make well-informed bets about the future, right? And that's what we try to do here every week. Well, I guess not so much this week, but every week I try to talk about analyzing properties, looking for deals. And a part of that is really getting into your corner of the world, right? Your market, your Sudbury, your London, your Windsor, whatever it is, and making sure you know that market, you know the neighborhoods, you know the rents, you know the property managers, you know what the houses are roughly valued at, right? That way, you know when you see a deal, you know when you don't, and you're willing to make the bet. And yeah, your bet might even be, I mean, with real estate, the great thing is it's really hard to get your bets wrong because the prices go up over time. So usually, if you wait long enough, you'll be kind of saved from your mistakes. But ultimately, you're making bets and you're hoping they're going to pay off, which, pardon me, usually they do. As long as you do that and you maintain that mentality, you're going to be able to grow and you're going to be able to scale and you're going to be able to take action um, much more quickly and with much less hesitation than the people who find themselves paralyzed, analysis paralysis, because they're trying to take in and process too much at once. Right? They're trying to take in and they're trying to process too much at once. So I'm asking you this week, maybe this whole month, try to have that self awareness to where when you're approaching a problem, whether it's potential investment or maybe it's something at work or maybe it's just something in your life, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be real estate oriented, but when you're facing these things, have the self awareness to see, hey, am I procrastinating? Am I avoiding? Am I delaying? Do I have analysis paralysis? Is this problem too big? Is there some way I can break it down? And one last aside, nothing to do with investing, but that same exact mindset, that same exact mentality, that's how you build a business, right? Because ultimately you're going to take some process, right? To build a business, any business, doesn't matter what kind of business it is. You're going to take some process and you need to break it down into its constituent parts. And then you need to give those parts to a team of people so that they can ultimately provide you with the result that you want, the outcome that that business is supposed to provide, right? Whether it's clean pipes for a plumbing business or whether it's a sign for a sign making business or whatever, you want to put all that stuff together. Speaking of a sign making business, I just wanted to give a little shout out here because I got this behind me and it's beautiful. I had a custom made sign made for me. I'll just put it on the screen. Am I doing a good job? I put it on the screen. Just keep it behind me. But it's a custom made acrylic sign. It's actually clear, but it's hard to see when you're on the camera. With the ARiSE Realty logo. It's very very nicely made and it looks really really nice. I just wanted to shout out Natalie. She has a little side hustle business called Nat's Designs where she makes these beautiful acrylic signs and I don't know for birthdays and gifts or whatever. Anyways, I use it to make my logo and I thought it looks really really cool. So I just wanted to show you again and give her a little shout out and really encourage everybody to spend some time really looking at some of the challenges and problems. Sorry, some of the challenges and problems in your own lives that you're trying to solve or overcome or improve, right? And see how you can apply this sort of thinking mentality um, to those things to try and break them down to their constituent components and solve the problems. Um, so yeah, that's the presentation for today. I had actually intended to show you a deal, but it's been an hour and I've run out of time. So I'm not going to get cut off because for those of you who missed the beginning, we now have the premium service or whatever, so you can talk as long as you want. So I'm going to open things up for questions, but I'm going to stop now because I'm going to try to um, restrict myself to just the 1 hour. So if anybody has any questions or anything, please now's the time. And if not, then I hope you all have a fantastic day and a great week and you work at growing your investments in your portfolio. Darian Elias. Oh, there is one thing you can do for me if you feel so inclined. If you'd like to click the link and just watch the YouTube video, you don't need to watch it. That's completely unnecessary. But if you click the link, then it'll say someone clicked on the link, and that's good. I think for YouTube, I have no idea. I don't know how YouTube works. But anyways, oh, is it not there? Oh, here, I'll resend it. Hold on, I'll send it to you right now. Updated. Oh, what the hell? Why can't I? Man, why is this so difficult? Armando, here's the link, right? If I send a message to everyone, there's the link. So I guess I need to put those in the emails, but I'm still kind of getting used to it. So I'm gonna try and figure that out. But like I said at the start of the seminar, I don't think you were here, Armando. I'm gonna try to put these on YouTube now. Just it records them. I was using something else to record them before, but I think this is probably a better way. So YouTube's gonna record them, put them up there, and then I'm still gonna do these meets because that's how I can interact with you guys. Yeah. But I'm gonna start doing the YouTube. So if you know people who they don't want to put their email on the list or whatever and receive the updates from me, and they just kind of want to drop in and watch whenever, yeah, there's gonna be YouTube. So yeah, I don't know if that'll ever be much, but it's something. Yeah. There's a lot of people that are lazy. They don't wake up at 10 a.m. on Sunday, and I know a bunch of them. 100%. Yeah. So I think that's a good solution. Mm-hmm. Like 10 a.m. You think about that though, like at 10 a.m. Like it's not like I'm asking you